Hamilton makes a huge statement as Ferrari looks ready to win at Monza. Oscar gets in trouble with the FIA, which could help Lando, and Alonso gives a surprising response to F1's future shorter races. Do consider subbing. Let's get into the latest F1 news. Lewis Hamilton has claimed that the sensation of pulling out of the garage in a scarlet Ferrari for the first time at the Italian GP is everything he could have dreamed, and more. The positive vibes are clear, with Hamilton topping the timing sheets in Free Practice 1 and finishing within the top 5 in Free Practice 2. New Ferrari hire Lewis Hamilton has emerged from F1's mandatory summer shutdown in much better spirits than how he entered it, and that has been clear at Monza. Prior to the break, Hamilton described himself as useless after failing to proceed to Q3 in the build-up to the Hungarian Grand Prix. Yet the driver pointed out that he's undertaken a major mindset shift before getting back in the car. As such, those uncomfortable feelings have been pushed to the side, at least temporarily, as the 7-time world champion prepares for his debut Italian Grand Prix as a Ferrari driver. "It's pretty incredible," Hamilton told F1 TV when asked about his experience thus far at his new team's home race. Amazing feeling leaving the garage. Just the whole experience. Being in the garage, the experience we had on Thursday with the Tifosi in Milan, and then to come here and drive out of the garage in a red car. It's all I ever thought it would be and more. Those positive emotions translated into a strong performance. Hamilton topped the charts in FP1 with a time of 1 minute 20.117 seconds, followed closely by his teammate Charles Leclerc. In FP2, Leclerc retained the second quickest time, while Hamilton dropped down to 5th overall. FP1 was a good session, he reflected. FP2, we made some changes and the car was a bit worse. The good thing is we can go back on it. It's better to have that in FP2 and learn from that rather than FP3. Lots of positives to take from today, and we'll do some work overnight. I hope that tomorrow we can be better. I think the McLarens are obviously still very fast, and I think it's very close with everyone in the top 5 and top 10. It'll be a challenge, it's not easy to overtake, and I've obviously got that penalty, which is unfortunate. Better have it now than next year, I guess. That 5th-place grid penalty remains the only dark mark hanging over this weekend. Stewards issued the driver that penalty after the conclusion of last weekend's Dutch Grand Prix, when stewards found that Hamilton had driven too quickly near the pits during the pre-race reconnaissance lap, in direct contravention of specific pre-race instructions and double-waved yellow flags. Still, there's positivity to be found. "I do feel optimistic," Hamilton admitted. "I still feel like I can potentially move forward. I was much happier with the car today, so I hope that continues tomorrow." He corrected himself, saying, "It will continue tomorrow because I'll make the changes tonight and come with a fresh head tomorrow." Over on the other side of the Ferrari garage is Monegasque driver Charles Leclerc, who offered a nuanced take on the team's Friday performance. "On low fuel and high fuel, it's been quite tricky but fast," Leclerc said, before adding, "I'd rather be in this position than having a consistent car but slow. We need to work a little bit on consistency. On the short runs, we managed to extract more or less what was in the car. However, for tomorrow, we need to get that consistency, and we are working on that. With the two cars, we tried different things, especially in FP1, and it seems that we kind of know the direction for tomorrow. Will that early pace translate into a strong qualifying performance? That remains to be seen, with the likes of Helmut Marko pointing out that, at Monza, Ferrari on Friday is always very good."
Alright guys, so here's my chat when it comes to Ferrari, right? We always know at Monza, they always turn up the engines on Friday practice. Some of the commentators, if you guys watch your F1 through Sky Sports, actually if you watch through F1 TV, you will know, some of the commentators were saying Ferrari always, even like Helmut Marko said, we know Helmut Marko always says some ridiculous stuff, but when it comes to Ferrari on Friday at Monza, it's always engines are at max. So we can't use Friday as a good indication of where they actually stand. But with that being said, I think this season Ferrari might bring a lot to Monza because the rest of the season has been pretty mid, if we're being honest. So I think this is the only chance to really, to really show up and say, okay guys, we can win here. But I still think they're gonna be at a disadvantage. I think Red Bull is gonna be really strong here. I think Mercedes should be okay. They should challenge maybe the second row in qualifying. We'll see when qualifying comes on later today, depending on when you guys are watching this. And yeah, but I think McLaren, as usual, will still be really quick. I think Lando, this this season, rather this race, I think he should win. If he doesn't win this race, I think it's pretty much championship is pretty much done. But if he wins, at least he keeps his foot, still in the door. But regarding Ferrari, I'm happy for Lewis. As a Ferrari fan, I obviously want the best, but I don't want to get my hopes too high. As a Ferrari fan, we all know, as Ferrari fans, those of you who are Ferrari fans, we all know they always have these high hopes. Come Monza, every single year we always have high hopes, but the same thing happens. So I'm trying to keep my hopes low until, maybe until the last 5 laps of the race, and it's a Ferrari 1-2, then I'm gonna be like, okay, Ferrari has done it. But till then, nah, I'm not falling for that trap again with Ferrari.
A change to V8 or V10 engines won't happen before the end of this decade, with the upcoming V6 hybrid set to see out at least a 5-year cycle. The scheduled meeting of power unit manufacturers that was arranged for next week to discuss the future direction of Formula One's engine rules has been postponed indefinitely. Following discussions earlier this year to evaluate a potential switch to V8 or V10 power units, a planned meeting to figure out a timeline for potential changes has been postponed. As reported by PlanetF1.com on Friday, a meeting between the F1 2026 power unit manufacturers was planned to be held in London on Thursday, September 11. The agenda was to discuss a possible introduction of a naturally aspirated power unit, running on sustainable fuel, with the leading proposal being that of a 2.4-litre V8, simplifying the engine formula considerably from the 1.6-litre V6 hybrids with increased electrification that is being introduced next season. It's understood a general consensus had been reached in advance of the meeting of the preferred engine architecture, with the focus being on whether or not to introduce the engine for 2029 or 30. However, PlanetF1.com understands that, on Friday evening, a decision has been reached to see out a full 5-year cycle with the V6 hybrids, as was originally planned for this regulation set. The postponement is understood to have been communicated to the 5 2026 power unit manufacturers on Friday, confirming that the proposed meeting has been pushed out indefinitely in order to allow all parties involved to prepare for the discussions regarding the future direction of the engine regulations. It's believed that, while the FIA was seeking a 2029 introduction, such a proposal would not secure sufficient support. The most likely manufacturers likely to have opposed a change before the end of the 5-year cycle are Honda and Audi, both of whom have made it clear that increased electrification aligns with their automotive strategy and technology push. While discussions will still go ahead at a later, undetermined time, these discussions will now focus on 2031, with the possibility of an earlier V8 or other alternative introduction firmly closed down. This means that the new V6 hybrids will see out the full 5-year cycle that was originally planned, and allows all the manufacturers to recoup costs and the full benefits of the immense research and development that has gone into the new power units. With the removal of the MGUH from the hybrid ancillaries, the new F1 power units are set to be close to a 50-50 split between the internal combustion engine and the electrical components, with the electrical output being 350 kilowatts at peak. The reason a possible change to a different engine formula, such as a return to naturally aspirated V8s or V10s, came down to the possibility being made more feasible due to the introduction of sustainable fuels, considerably reducing the need to focus on fossil fuel efficiency, as well as significantly reducing costs by way of more simple engine architectures. There would also be the desirable side effect of a return to the visceral screams and howls of a V8 or V10, with the 10-cylinder engine last used in F1 in 2005, with the V8 last used in 2013. Added to that was the fact the upcoming regulations have resulted in significant compromises being required on the chassis and aerodynamic side in order to ensure the lap times remain roughly comparable to today, albeit with this performance being delivered in a different fashion, as active aerodynamics will see the cars switch between X mode, low drag, and Z mode, high downforce. In July, FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem spoke with enthusiasm about the idea of the switch to a V8, saying it was the right way to go for Formula One. The V8, is it happening? He said during a roundtable discussion with select media, including PlanetF1.com at Silverstone. Yes, with the team now, I'm very optimistic, happy about it, and FOM, Formula One management, is supportive. The teams are realizing that it is the right way. When I brought up V6, V8, V10, or V12, it was an idea. It's to sustain the business. The current engine is so complicated you have no idea, and it is costly. R&D is reaching 200 million. An engine is costing approximately $1.8 to $2.1 million. So if we go on with a straight V8, many of the manufacturer and OEMs produce V8s in their cars, so commercially it's correct. How much do you drop it? The cost? The target is more than 50% in everything, but then you sustain what you have. Then the teams can afford it. Much cheaper, lighter by 90 to 100 kilograms, which means that what we can add more safety in, which is worth 50 kilograms, is going to be even less. The worst thing to a driver is the mass weight. The car will be smaller and it will be better, and then the sound, you will have it. So really, that is the way to go. It's cutting costs. People think that Formula One is unlimited money, but not all the teams. So this is something now we are having the buy-in.
Alright, so it was pretty obvious that the F1 teams and the engine suppliers were not going to switch back this late, into the next regulations coming in. With all the development that's happening and everything that's happening, it was very unlikely. As hopeful as it and cool as it would have been, to have V8s or V10s just switch and be there next season, that would have been so cool. But obviously, realistically speaking, that was never going to happen. So now we're basically waiting for another 5 or so years till we actually get V8s. That's if it goes through. And the interesting thing is, everyone's on board. Even the engine manufacturers are on board. Even though obviously they didn't agree to it, they are on board because they really want to bring back, the OG Formula One sound, like what made F1 the best, pinnacle of motorsport. So that's really cool, but we'll see and we'll just wait for what's going to happen. I really do think F1 made a big mistake when it came to next year's regulations. Obviously, we'll see how the racing goes. The racing might balance everything out, but the tech and everything else, it's, because we're now starting to get the side effects of over electrification. Most electric cars now are starting to lose their momentum that they had a few years ago. And the world is changing, everyone's shifting. Now we're having the pushback and we're starting to have engines like get back their life, internal combustion engines. So that's really cool to see, but we'll just wait and see what F1 does. But otherwise it's looking hopeful. We'll just have to ride through these next few years in terms of the tech and all that, because I think the first few years might be a bit tricky with like reliability and stuff, and also some of the racing might be a bit weird and interesting, but we'll probably get used to it. That's how it is with every new regulation. Comes in, people hate it, few years people don't mind, and then you end up having people who like it. So we'll see how it goes.
McLaren driver Oscar Piastri has been given a reprimand by the FIA for failing to follow the race director's instructions in FP2 at the Italian Grand Prix at Monza. The red flag was thrown after 10 minutes of FP2 at Monza, after Andrea Kimi Antonelli, the Mercedes driver, spun and got beached in the gravel at Lesmo 2. Ahead of the restart, Piastri was released into the pit lane before the FIA communicated an official restart time. The potential breach was quickly noticed by Max Verstappen's Red Bull race engineer, Giampiero Lambiase, who alerted his driver to the incident. Lambiase said over team radio, "Piastri at the head of the queue, Max. He did leave without the resumption time, so it's being looked into." Antonelli and his Mercedes teammate George Russell were involved in a similar incident at the Bahrain Grand Prix earlier this season. The Mercedes pair were both handed a one-place grid penalty for taking to the pit lane before the FIA had communicated a restart time after a red flag following an accident involving Haas driver Esteban Ocon. Piastri and the McLaren team representative were required to report to the stewards at 18:20 local time at Monza. The stewards confirmed a short time later that Piastri has escaped with a reprimand. The stewards' report read, "The stewards reviewed video and timing evidence. Car 81 was released from its garage at 17:13.50, whereas the restart of the session was confirmed by race control on timing page 3 at 17:14.09, this clearly being in breach of item 22.2 of the race director's event notes. The team admitted during the hearing that they made a mistake as they reacted to the track clear message instead of reacting to the message indicating the restart time of the session. The stewards acknowledged that, in contrast to prior incidents of similar nature happening in qualifying, no significant sporting advantage could potentially be gained as this happened in free practice, and therefore consider a reprimand to the competitor to be appropriate." Piastri enters the Italian Grand Prix weekend with a 34-point lead in the drivers' standings after taking his 7th victory of the F1 2025 season at last weekend's Dutch GP at Zandvoort.
So before all the tinfoil hats come at me, obviously this is nothing to do with the Lando versus Oscar championship, but these things happen in F1, and yeah. But the main thing when it comes to just talking about McLaren, talking about Lando, or talking about Oscar, is just the championship fight we have. I think is underappreciated. I think we need to appreciate this championship fight more, and once it comes to an end, whoever wins, whoever side you're on, in a few years time we'll actually realize that this was a really good championship fight. No matter which side it goes, these are two young talented drivers, and yeah, either or, whatever happens, I think I'm going to be satisfied. Obviously, is if it happens in a legal way. We don't want no 2021 drama and stuff. Even speaking about 2021 was such a good season. If we put the drama aside, we just put action straight up, and it was a really, really good season. This season isn't as dramatic, obviously, because McLaren is keeping the toxicity as low as possible. But otherwise, it's such a good season when it comes to like the action on track, when it comes to the intensity, whether you're a Lando or Oscar fan, whoever side you're on, it's always like really close between them two. So that's really good to see. And yeah, we should actually thank McLaren for having two, top drivers instead of like a Red Bull style kind of setup where we would have known by now that Verstappen has won like 2023 kind of season, but it's much closer and it's much more exciting. So yeah.
Fernando Alonso does not believe Formula One has a fundamental problem with the length of Grand Prix. It is more an issue with society and the kids. More sprints and shorter Grand Prix were recently suggested as a way forward for Formula One by the sports chief Stefano Domenicali, who revealed Formula One's highlights reel is garnering more viewers than ever before. There's the issue of race length. We believe it's a bit too long for younger viewers, the Italian said as per Autosport. We're seeing on many of our channels that highlight reels are hugely popular. Perhaps for those of us who grew up with the full format, it's fine, but a large portion of the audience only wants to see the key moments. One solution would be more sprints, Domenicali adding. There's a topic on the table concerning the format we'll use in the coming years, starting with sprint weekends. We need to understand whether to increase them, how to increase them, and whether to use different formats. We have several discussions to have with the teams to decide the direction. The former Ferrari team boss went on to say that practice sessions only appeal to the super specialists, with people wanting more action such as Friday qualifying sessions on sprint weekends. The direction is clear, he continued. I can guarantee that in a few years there will be demand to have all weekends with the same format. I'm not saying we'll get to MotoGP, which has a sprint at every round. That's too big a step. I see it more as a maturation process that respects a more traditionalist approach. Formula One introduced sprint weekends in 2021, trialing 3 in the season with numbers having since increasing to 6. They have, however, received mixed reviews with too many fast-paced processions and little action, as the drivers aren't willing to risk the cars with qualifying taking place just hours after the sprint concludes. But while Domenicali's proposals have divided the paddock, one driver sitting on the fence, and perhaps even in front of the TV by the time F1 makes any notable changes, is Fernando Alonso. Although the Aston Martin driver doesn't believe Formula One needs to make any further changes to the weekend format, he trusts that the former Ferrari team boss will lead the sport in the right direction. Yeah, I don't know, Alonso said in Monza. I mean, I will be on the other side, I will be in front of the TV when that happens. So, I don't know. I don't think it's a problem with the sport. So probably it's not needed to change, but Stefano knows better than anyone. So if he thinks that it's needed, we are in good hands with him in this kind of decision. But I don't know. Also, football matches are a little bit long. When I sit in front of the TV, I'm not watching the 90 minutes fully concentrated. I go to the kitchen, come back. There's always some moments of distraction, and no one is talking about having 60-minute football matches or something like that. So it's a problem of society and the kids, but not the sport. So probably it's not needed, the change. But while Alonso said changes are probably not needed, his former teammate Esteban Ocon says they are definitely not. Obviously interesting to always think about what could be best for our sport, for sure. He told PlanetF1.com and other media outlets, I've been here now for a long time, I've seen different format of races. Sprint racing being introduced, the different tyres, the old sprint format as well. A lot has been has been tried, I think it's good that we get consulted a little bit in this with Stefano. My opinion is that there's no need to make a big change about what we have. I think going to a MotoGP stage would be a bit extreme for sure, to have a sprint weekend at every race, and I don't think necessarily the show will be much better for sure. As a fan, what you want to see is more racing. We live in such a consumer world now that we want to see more spectacle, more show, and more frequently. When we are on Netflix and we see a series, we are like, it's too long to wait for season 2. That's basically how the world is now. But it's also nice to wait patiently and expect the race. A Grand Prix is a big thing, and I'm a bit more into that. I really like to wait a good amount of time to be excited again. I would agree that maybe some of the races are a bit long, let's say the ones that are, more than 2 hours, or like Singapore, stuff like that. Maybe shortening a little bit, it would not make any difference to the spectacle of the show, but that's how it's been historically for so long. But a race like Monza or a race like Spa, that would be too short.
Alright guys, here's the thing. Personally, for me, respectfully speaking, I'm not a big Fernando Alonso fan, but when it comes to this, I completely agree, like when it comes to the new proposals that the F1 CEO mentioned, shorter races, more sprint races, reverse grids. I think shorter races was probably the worst idea we could have, put into that play. All the other ideas we can kind of work with them. Okay, maybe not every single weekend have a sprint race, but reverse grids, we can also work with them. The others are more manageable, but shorter races, I feel like that's the core of Formula One. And the example he made of football is a good example. And it's just, when it comes to F1, I think there's certain things we need to change, but we need to take small steps, of just making the sport more inclusive, making the sport more accessible, to everyone, and just making the sport actually a global sport. Because we all know that it's not as global as we might say, but obviously for most people, we don't really think much about that. But I think Formula One needs to work on those other things instead of trying to make it more appealing to like younger audiences, so yeah, I think Fernando Alonso is right with this one. This is definitely a W take from Fernando. I don't usually I'm not usually on Fernando's side, but hey man, when he's made a good statement, that's fair. I feel like I'm giving a fair opinion, and obviously on the news side, just giving the news as unbiased as possible. And yeah, but anyway, that'll be the end of this video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. There'll be a video clicked or linked somewhere by the side, and then you guys can just click it. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.